Member Pam Teal.
Present.
Member Gina Blackman Taylor.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yep, I can hear
Great.
you. Thank you so much. Member Elizabeth Cadigan.
Present.
Member Felicia Gonzalez.
Present.
Member Pam Goins Brown.
Present.
Member Danica Hayes. Member Annie Hicks.
Present.
Member Lou Marcuzzi. Member Darcy McInnes.
Present.
Member Sue Molden.
Present.
Member Susan Neal.
Present.
Member Juanita Ortiz.
Present.
Member Drew Shar. And Member Andrew Tiscarino.
Present.
Okay, Chair Salazar, with 12 members in attendance, we do have quorum.
All right, great. Thank you, Rick. All right, at this time, I would like everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And so now at this time, just a couple of housekeeping pieces here. First, the council reserves the right to take agenda items out of posted order. Items may be pulled or removed from the agenda at any time, and items may be combined for consideration. Members of the public may provide public comment in person or in writing via email, and that information was up on the screen earlier. Public comment will be accepted via email for the duration of the meeting and shared with council members during the appropriate agenda items. Public comments may be emailed to rick.derry@doe.nv.gov. And there is also a link to the email that is provided in the posted agenda. Members of the public are asked to indicate in the email subject line whether the comment is for public comment number 1 or public comment number 2. And public comment number 1 is limited to any item appearing on the agenda, and no action may be taken on a matter discussed at this time until the matter is included as an agenda item on which action may be taken. Public comment number 2 is limited to any matter within the TLC's jurisdiction, control, or advisory power. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes. And then just a couple of reminders for us. Please remember to keep your microphone muted unless speaking. Please click the raised hand button to be called on to speak, and I rely on Kathy to help me with that. Remember to state your name, please, for the record, and then allow extra time to be heard and or recognized due to sometimes the delay. And with that, that's our housekeeping. I'd also like to take just a moment to recognize Susan Neal. Welcome. You have been reappointed for another term with the Teachers and Leaders Council, so we thank you for your willingness to serve. So we're glad you're with us again. And we are still waiting on the appointee from the governor's office for the Board of Trustees seat that was left by the departure of Linda Gilkerson. And I do believe we now have the person appointed for that, but not starting until March 1st. Is that correct, Kathy?
It is. We just received, oh, sorry, Kathy, wait for the record. We just received notification of that late this morning. So the new appointee will be Richard Varner coming from Carson City.
Great. Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to move to our first public comment period and ask to see if there is any public comment first from the north.
This is Jackie Nygaard for the record, and there are no public comments here in Carson City.
Thank you. And now I would like to ask if there is any public comment in the South.
There is no current public, can't talk. There's no current public comment here in the South.
Thank you. And is there any public comment from email?
There is no current public comment submitted via email.
All right, thank you. And so with that, I'll move to agenda item 3, which is the review of the previous meeting minutes, and ask you to take a moment to read through the minutes. The draft minutes are posted in our meeting materials. So I'll take just a moment and let you work through those, and then we will call for a vote for approval.
Pam, this is Gina Blackman Taylor for the record. I raised my hand. I'm just not sure if it
I'm
worked
sorry.
on my phone.
Yes,
Can you hear me okay?
yes, we
Okay.
can. Please go ahead.
I was hoping someone could refresh my memory because I was looking over the minutes actually a couple days ago, and I believe when we were talking about some of these groups that were being approached, like with the student groups, I believe I mentioned something about connecting potentially with the SOTs, but I was trying to find the past recording and I couldn't find it. So I don't know if someone else can help me refresh my memory, if there was a conversation about parents and SOTs and using that to reach out for potential feedback the same way that kids were being reached out. If I'm imagining it, I am well fine with hearing that. But does anyone remember that from our conversation from 3 months ago?
Yes, I do. I think that when Lisa Ford gave her presentation about the statewide plan, that you had brought up that one of the audiences that they could consider taking a look at for input was that group, as the school support teams. And I'm not sure if that made it into the minutes.
Okay, I didn't see it either. Thank you, Pam, for your memory. I appreciate that. If we can have a little note, because I do think it's important that it reflects at least a conversation in terms of trying to reach out to parents as well. But with that one addendum, I motion that we approve the minutes.
Thank you. Kathy, is that something that we can make sure is added into the minutes?
Kathy Hoyt for the record. Yes, the council would have to make a motion to approve the minutes with corrections. So it is something that, Jenna, that we can go back and review and make sure that it's added to the final approved copy.
Thank you. Any other comments or?
To say,
Then I will ask for a motion to approve with an amendment as stated with regards to the presentation done by Ms. Ford and input from school support teams.
this is Gina Blackman Taylor for the record. I so move.
Thank you. So we have a motion.
I second.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor for approval of the minutes with the addendum of adding in the Lisa Ford segment, which is number 5 on the minutes, the statement that the SSTs could also be used as an audience for input on the state improvement plan. Any discussion? Hearing none, then I will call for the vote and ask everyone to please say aye. Or
Aye.
if you
Aye.
oppose, say nay.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, then the minutes are approved with the addendum as stated. And again, Kathy, was there any more clarification that we needed for that?
Kathy Hoyt for the record. I think we are all set.
Okay, perfect, great, thank you. So at this time, for agenda item 4, we are very happy to welcome today Senior Deputy Attorney General Dave Gardner, who is going to present us with an update and a refresher on open meeting law. And so I would now like to turn it over to Senior Deputy Attorney General David Gardner. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Somebody already pulled it up. Okay. First thing, I like to kind of give a little description first. If you have a question, feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand, make a comment. I am one that if I don't ask my question immediately, sometimes I forget it. So I prefer to answer it. I don't take any offense to that. Number 2, there's going to be a lot more on these slides than I'm going to say. I don't really like reading from them for you, so it will have more information than I'm going to say, but you guys will get the gist of it during my presentation. Okay, could you please move to the next slide, please? So I always like to go over the intent of the law. The intent is basically the public should know what actions a public body takes and how it gets there. That's the deliberation part. So how it gets to a decision and what the decisions are should be public. Next slide, please. The open meeting law is subject to all public bodies. So a public body is basically, they changed the definition, I don't know, about 2 decades ago, 15 years ago. And it now means basically any body that is funded with state money or is created by a statute, constitution, etc. So Teachers and Leader Council, definitely a public body. But one thing I always like to point out is that last bullet point, this includes any subcommittee you create. So even if a subcommittee has less than a quorum, which we'll go over later, it is still considered a public body on its own. So it must comply with the open meeting law. It must do its own minutes. It must do its own agendas, etc. Next slide, please. So here's the legal description where they changed what is a public body. Basically what I just said. So these are the requirements for it, and it's how it's created. Next slide, please. One of the most important things you need to know regarding the open meeting law is what is a meeting, because the open meeting law only applies to meetings. Meetings are that bottom bullet point. You have to have a quorum of the public body. So I believe in statute, a quorum of this public body is defined in statute as 9.
Yes.
Yes, 9. NRS 391-455 sub 4. So you must have 9 members for a quorum. Then it has to have that's plus deliberation or action within your jurisdiction. So if you have 8 of you meet together and talk about anything under the sun, including things in front of this body, I have no problem. That is not an open meeting law violation. It only becomes an open meeting law violation if 9 people discuss it. And that includes anything within your purview. You could have this entire meeting, every member meet and talk about how awesome or bad a sports team is, or how much you love a movie, or even things within education that are not in front of this body, for or against who the next CCSD superintendent will be. All of those things are allowed. So but remember, anytime that it's feeling to be anything within the jurisdiction of this body, that's when you have to be careful. Next slide, please. here are some of the common issues. The first one is the one I mentioned. We call them walking quorum or constructive quorums. Basically what they mean is 8 people met, discussed a topic within the purview of this body, and then one of those 8 talked to a 9th person on this body to turn it into a quorum. It doesn't all have to happen in the same meeting. If 8 of you talk about it and then one of those 8 talks to a 9th, it is now an open meeting law violation because a quorum of the body discussed something outside of a public meeting. I don't see that very often anymore, but it's one thing I like to make sure you guys are aware of that because it could happen. The third one in there, reply all, that used to be a nightmare for us. Luckily, staff's pretty trained. They never send it to you anymore where you can reply all and it actually hits everybody. They always BCC you guys. But if you're wondering why, that's why. Because it used to be a nightmare for us because we'd get these reply all and you're like, everybody shut up. Nobody responded to that email and we'd have to like kind of try and fix it on the back end. So that's not really a problem. Next slide, please. Here are some of the main requirements that you need to know about in complying with the open meeting law. One of the first things is the agenda. The agenda is your blueprint. It is your map. It is where you can go and where you can't go. It will say whether something is for information or discussion or possible action or all three. But it limits what you can talk about. The public must be aware of what you're going to be discussing. So sometimes you'll see me do this during meetings or one of the other DAGs. We will jump in and say, hey, we're going a little bit outside of what that agenda item says. You have to rein it back in because we can only go where the agenda says that we've told the public in advance where we're going to go. Public comment, there's 2 ways you can do it. The main one that state agencies do it is 1 public comment at the beginning, 1 public comment at the end. You actually can do it for every action item, but to be honest, most state agencies don't do it that way. Materials, support materials are anything you use to make a decision. And the requirement is that they have to be made available to the public at the same time they're made available to you. That doesn't mean they have to be on the website. I get this question all the time. Well, it doesn't have to be on the website. All it has to do is be made available. If you look at your agenda, it says, hey, if you want these, reach out to NDE and we'll send them to you. That is making them available. Minutes have to be approved within 45 days. We always try and do that. To be honest, sometimes we don't hit it, but we tried to do that one. And then this one, the facilities one, I'll make mention, but I've only seen it really needed to be said a couple times. It's actually the reason for this rule. You cannot purposely put a meeting in a really tiny room so nobody can attend. Yes, public bodies have done that. Yes, that's the reason for this meeting or for that rule, because you don't have to go out and rent an amphitheater. You don't have to spend money. But if you have access to a bigger room and you know there's going to be people, you should use your access to the bigger room. Like I said, that's not a big deal anymore, but there were definitely some public bodies who did that, and it was a violation. Next slide, please. This is talking about what needs to be on the agenda. So the courts have come up with this term, clear and complete, and they've discussed it. Basically, what that means is that a lay person, the public, must be able to read your agenda item and know what you're talking about. If they can't, then the agenda item needs to be better. And then it even gets worse than that. The more controversial or the more people who want to hear about it, the more specific you need to be. You can't just say, agenda item, we're going to talk about education stuff. That would not fly. It needs to be something so the public is alerted of what you're going to be talking about. Sometimes we put member comments, member reports, that's fine, as long as they're like one directional. They're information. So like, hey, here's member comments. We're going to talk about something cool, but we're not going to discuss it. We're not going to take action on it, that kind of things. Another one that I get a question about all the time is that last bullet point, which is sometimes people bring up awesome arguments, awesome things in either your beginning or closing public comment. Even though they're awesome, unless your agenda specifically says something about that topic, you cannot talk about it. You can talk to them outside of the meeting. You can do all sorts of things, but that body cannot talk to them unless it's on the agenda. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, this is one that we're getting into more and more, sadly, where public comment is getting kind of abusive to bodies. the first the bad. There's not a ton that you can do. The First Amendment, we consider these meetings to be limited public forums, meaning that the public is allowed to bring up their comments. You cannot discriminate against on their viewpoint, even if it's an awful viewpoint that you consider horrendous. You have to be able. They have to be able to say it. What you can do, and I highlighted there, is if their conduct or comments are willfully disruptive, then you can stop them. Then you can have them removed, to be honest. Typically, the courts are going to be looking for their comments and their actions need to be pretty bad. I would say that I have seen a couple times where it was validly done. You do not have to accept personal attacks on yourself. But remember, there is a small line, but there is a line between a personal attack on a person and complaining about that person. They can complain all day that they hate what you're doing on the council. They can hate what your votes. They can hate all that stuff. That's fine, and unfortunately, you just have to take it. They cannot, on the other hand, just attack you personally. Attack that person personally. Complain about your what you wear, your hair. Make comments about you as a person. Those are out of line, and those you can stop. So next slide, please. Remote technologies is basically virtual meetings. It's basically what happened during COVID and then was eventually codified in statute by the legislature. Basically, it means you can have a meeting without a physical location. For example, today's meeting is not a remote technology system meeting. Just because some people are attending virtually does not make it that. You have two physical locations that people can walk to and attend the meeting. So this is not a remote technology systems meeting. When you do have a remote technology systems meeting, you have to do it differently. There's a couple adjustments you have to make. That's usually a staff thing. That's really, members, you won't really notice that much. And I would be dealing with the staff to make sure we do that. Next slide, please. Here are some of the exceptions to the rule. The rule is everything from deliberation and actions is public. Here are the exceptions. You can hold a closed session to talk about the character, misconduct, professional competence of somebody. Most of the time. There are times when this would be like, if you had I'll use the example of a school district. A school district elects or hires a superintendent. That superintendent, because of their position, would not be able to hold that meeting in a closed session because of their position. Most times you can. If it was a licensing issue or any of those other kind of things, you can hold it. But for some executive type people, they can't. But once again, closed meetings are to the benefit of that person, not to the body. So if that person says, no, I want it open, then this body has to have it in the open. Second one is emergency meetings. I have never seen an emergency meeting, to be honest. Doesn't mean they don't exist. It means the courts are going to look at, could you possibly have waited 3 days before you held the meeting? If you can, it was not an emergency meeting. If you can't, and it's really something that has to be done now, and you can't possibly wait 3 days, then yes, you can use the emergency meeting, and we can skip some of the open meeting law. They still want you to comply with as much as you can, but to be honest, I've never seen it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, doesn't mean it can't exist, but I've never had any of those issues. And then one of the biggest questions I get is, hey, we're all friends, and we like to go to conferences, or we like to go to conventions, or we have this really cool thing we're going to go to do. We're going to go look at a school. Can we do that? Yes. The answer is yes, 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 1,000 times yes. What you can't do is a quorum of you can't talk about shop regarding your Teachers and Leaders Council jurisdiction. You can talk about anything else. Another one that you can do is training. Another one you can do is if there was a lawsuit, you'd be able to meet with me or one of the other DAGs to discuss your legal options, stuff like that, outside of the public. Next slide, please. So thankfully, these are really going down. We don't see many violations anymore. We're getting better at this. Both as attorneys, we're getting better at this, and as bodies. But if you have a violation, if everything that you did is void, meaning it's gone, it's like you didn't do it. The Office of the Attorney General, that's the OAG there. We have primary responsibility for enforcing the law. Several of them, like myself, I help handle open meeting law complaints. Basically, we just do an investigation. We get the complaint from the public usually. We then send that complaint to whoever the public body is. We ask them to respond. They send us their response. We then do an analysis based on the allegations and the response to see if there is a actual violation. If we find a violation, we will let you know. If we don't find a violation, we'll let you know too. But if we find a violation, we'll let you know, and you are required to put our decision on your agenda that says we violated the open meeting law, and all the actions taken on this date basically are void, because or during this thing are void. Usually, you're going to find the Office of the Attorney General is going to be enforcing this. But next slide, please. There is actually people, if their rights were violated under the open meeting law, they can file their own case. You don't see this happen very often, but it's there. Another thing is there are criminal and civil penalties for not following it knowingly. It's knowingly violating it. But the legislature provided a protection. That last one says that if I, your attorney, screw up and I tell you something just stupid, but you listen to me, you're protected. So if you have a stupid attorney who just really messes up, you can still listen to them and be protected. So you have a protection from all criminal and civil penalties if your attorney is the one you're listening to. You could still be found to be out of compliance with the law. You can still have that violation put on your agenda. You just can't have personal criminal or civil penalties against you. Next slide, please. I like to point out some of the updates that happened in the last session. Some of it was just codifying what the AG's office has been doing anyways, and some of it was making changes to primarily remote technology meetings. With remote or virtual meetings, during the first public comments, you have to provide some extra information. Your support materials have to be posted on your website. If you have a multi-day meeting, you have to have public comment at the beginning and the end of every day. You used to be able to do just a public comment your first day, and then your second day you could do the closing comment. Now they want it every day. These last two are ones that we kind of did anyways. You only have to consider voting members when you talk about quorum, because we're putting a lot of non-voting members on bodies anymore, but we only consider voting members when we consider quorum. And then number two, when you have vacancies, so let's say you have 16 people on this body, if I remember correctly, you could say, well, actually, we can remove one, or let's see, you can remove two, and now a quorum would be, or sorry, you remove three, and now a quorum would be 8. That does not apply to this body. And the reason it doesn't is because you guys have a quorum in statute. It says 9. So it's always 9. That doesn't really apply to you. But if it wasn't in statute, then we could shrink your number for quorum based on the amount of vacancies. Next slide, please. These are the resources that the AG's office puts out there. You can literally see the manual that we used in our interpretations. You can see the forms. They have a bunch of compliance checks. That is, just look up Nevada open meeting law manual, and it's right there. And then if the next slide has all of my contact information, I am happy to answer questions. And for me, I do it all the time, so it's not really that big of a problem, and I can usually knock them out pretty quick. So most questions I know off the top of my head. I can't say I know all of them, but a lot of them I do. So if you have any questions, happy to answer them in the future. I'm also happy to answer any questions now, because that's the last of my presentation. So any questions open meeting law wise?
Any questions for Senior Deputy Attorney General? with regards to open meeting law and TLC? Well, Senior Deputy Attorney General David Gardner, I think that you shared quite a bit of important information to us, and we're very appreciative of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And so now I'll move to agenda item 5, which is elections, and I'll turn it back over to you, Senior Deputy Attorney General David Gardner.
Thank you very much. Okay. Pursuant to NRS 391-455, subsection 3, this council, at its first meeting and annually thereafter, elects a chair from among its members. We also do a vice chair. The election's pretty simple. Any member can nominate themselves or another member of the body. As soon as we get all the nominations, we hold a vote. If there's only one nomination, we still have to hold a vote. I know it sounds crazy because there's nobody, you don't have somebody you're against, but we still have to hold it pursuant to the law. So that being said, anybody who wants to nominate themselves or some other member for chair.
Pam Till, for the record, I nominate Pam Salazar.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other nominations for chair? Okay. Hearing none. I know it's weird. We still have to vote. Okay. All those in favor of Pam Salazar being elected as chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Please say nay. Awesome. Congratulations, Chair Salazar.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your trust in me.
Okay. And now the process is the exact same for vice chair. Anyone can nominate themselves or somebody else on this body for vice chair. So please provide any nominations for vice chair now, please.
Pam Till, for the record, I nominate Sue Molden.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, same thing. We have to vote on it, even though there's only one. All of those in favor of Sue Molden being the vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, congratulations, Vice Chair Molden. And with that, I will turn it back over to Chair Salazar. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And again, thank you for all your help with us doing this, Deputy Attorney General David Gardner. We really appreciate it because it helps us, make sure that we're doing the work in the right way. And I think it also points out how important Kathy Holt is to us for us to be able to operate the way that we're operating. So again, thank you very much for your help with this. So with that said, I would now like to move to agenda item 6. We're always excited to hear about the updates from NDE with regards to NEPF. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Kathy Holt.
Thank you, Chair Salazar, and congratulations. Kathy Hoyt, Education Programs Professional for the Office of Educator Development, Licensure, and Family Engagement, affectionately known as EdLife. So to give you some updates for the NEPF in regards to NDE, the winter liaison newsletter was shared with district NEPF liaisons and posted to the NDE update on December 10th, 2024. We also had a brief NEPF liaisons meeting following our previous TLC meeting on November 25th, 2024. Attendance was optional and focused mostly on sharing the NEPF field study winter participant survey instructions, which we are going to go over some survey results for you a little bit later in this meeting. We also want to give you an update on our, sorry, I froze up for a second, on how the NEPF field study is currently going. We are in the process of getting through our work group meetings. Work groups met for their third session the week of February 11th. We reviewed the winter field study participant survey data, which we're also going to be sharing with you. And that was gave us the ability to share a lot of feedback on NEPF implementation in district buildings. And we got work group feedback on the summative evaluation process, which is currently taking place. Work groups are going to meet for one last session the week of May 5th, and they'll be sharing final feedback on field study implementation in their buildings and their recommendations going forward. We wanted to take some time to break down the survey that was shared with our participants. So the field study participant survey was shared with all participating LEAs from December 2nd, and it was open until December 20th. And so that's about approximately 85 schools. We got a total of 256 responses. 209 of those were teachers, 46 responses were administrators, and we had one principal supervisor take the survey. We asked multiple questions regarding site-based implementation of field study materials and provided opportunities for people to leave us comments. And to ensure confidentiality, we did not include the single principal supervisor's responses in the review that we're going to show you, just to make sure that we're protecting confidentiality. But we did want to go over some of the questions with the council so you can get some more feedback. So we asked different sets of questions for our teacher participants versus our administrator participants and our principal supervisors. We wanted to know how the training process was for the different, the rubrics, the materials, and the understanding for the new summative evaluation scoring. So we asked if the training activities enhanced understanding of the NEPF for our teachers. You can see there it was about a 60-40 split, just to kind of summarize that for you. We had 50% agree that it enhanced understanding, 11% strongly agree, and then we had 22% and then 16% on the disagree side. We asked if the consolidation of the rubric pages improved clarity. If you can remember, we had cut the document down from about 24 pages overall to 11. And so again, it was about a little bit more than a 60-40 split. So for the most part, though, teachers did agree that it did help improve clarity when it came to the NEPF rubrics. We also asked if the shift from indicators to descriptors were helpful in guiding professional growth. And you can see there in our survey data, it was pretty consistent in all the questions that we asked, in this case, it's about a 70-30 split. So some of the comments that were left to us just from the teacher group was about suggestions for implementation going forward, and about their current feelings about implementation in their buildings. So we had a teacher comment that they feel they need more time to do reflection and planning when implementing the NEPF process. We had a suggestion that first and second year teachers should be on a type of gradual release program when it comes to the standards, and that it is not possible to excel at all of them immediately. We had one more suggestion too, that changes to the NEPF were briefly discussed with us, but not done in detail. So more support or any actual support would have been beneficial. Before we go on to administrators, are there any questions or comments that anyone would like to share?
Pam Teal for the record. As one of the participants in the pilot with my administrators and teachers, I think, as we ask, I don't know how many answered the survey, Hopefully some did, right? But reality, if I just ask how it's going, my administrators feel it's significantly helpful to have the indicators rolled up into the standards so that we're not looking at all of those indicators that then go toward the standard, but then can within each one, then those indicators that were, evidence was like across several of those. It was helpful then to have that in a smaller bucket to talk about and train teachers with. But we're also talking Lincoln, where we've done extensive trainings with my administrators and my teachers to understand that it's a growth model. And the intent is that we look at these things towards what we can do for improvement. And I understand the gradual release a little bit, but it's also then, I think, a misunderstanding potentially by either teachers or administrators that if you're a first or second year teacher, you shouldn't have that's why you've got one or two goals like students would have around where they're going to move and what they're going to do within those standards. So just that pivotal piece of understanding that we didn't significantly change anything. We just combined it so that there was more cross correlation between those standards that the indicators were already indicating anyway, if you've trained that way. I think it has helped immensely with time and planning. And I would love to tell everybody we have more time for reflection. I need more time. I need more time for reflection as well. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Member Teal. Anyone else before we move on and take a look at administrator comments? Okay, Ms. Hoyt, you can continue.
Thank you, Kathy Hoyt, for the record. Continuing on to our administrators. So we asked administrators pretty similar questions, but we also wanted to make sure that we got the perspective of not only their evaluation process as they're working with their teachers, but the guidance and feedback they received from their own supervisors in regards to implementing their own standards for the NEPF. So we asked them the same question about clarity. We did have fewer administrators respond, but you can see that it was about an 80 to 20 split respectively when it came to the feeling that the new rubrics did help improve clarity. We wanted to get administrator opinions on whether or not they felt their teachers' understanding of their own standards improved. So meaning that did they felt that their teachers were getting, stronger and gaining knowledge when it comes to implementation of the NEPF. So it was about a pretty even split between agree and disagree. We also wanted to know whether or not the redesign was an efficient use of time, because time management was one of the ideas that prompted the field study, and how can we help our LEAs manage the system more effectively and have better usage of their time. So you can see there we asked if they felt from the administrative perspective that it saved them time completing their required tasks in evaluating their teachers. So you can see there that the majority of administrators agreed that yes, it did help them use their time a little bit more efficiently. We also wanted to know from the administrative perspective whether they felt it was a good use of their time being evaluated. So whether or not it helped streamline the process with their supervisors to have a better understanding and use of time when they were completing their required tasks while being evaluated. And you can see again, the majority of administrators agreed that it was a good use of their time to complete their responsibilities being evaluated. So we also got a few comments from our administrators in regards to implementation. One was that they felt their evaluation doesn't even begin to include all that they have to complete in a day at the high school and secondary levels. and other duties. Again, I think that kind of stems to time management and the amount of tasks that administrators are responsible for. We had another administrator recommend additional support and more in-person training for administrators to have better understanding. And then we had kind of a common comment about clarity between scoring in regards to a level 3 versus a level 4 when it comes to summative evaluations. And we're going to discuss that in a little bit more detail. But before going forward, any comments or questions in regards to feedback from our administrators for the survey?
Pam Salazar for the record. I would just say that I think it's, again, clear that both from teacher standpoint and from administrator standpoint, that it does come back to support, professional learning, giving administrators, as I requested there, more in-person training so that they have a better understanding, not only of, and we've had this conversation before, not only of the understanding of the integration of the standards and the levels of performance with the standards, recognizing the descriptor language within the standards helps an administrator better understand the difference between a 3 and a 4. And so I think as we've presented numerous times over the years to the Nevada State Board, and in terms of the implementation, that the implementation is tied so clearly to the professional learning. And so, the more that we can support administrators and teachers with understanding the NEPF, what those standards represent in terms of instructional moves and leadership moves, then I think we'll see less issue with, for example, understanding the difference between a 3 or a 4, or as Member Till mentioned, a new teacher, a novice teacher having the expectation that they're going to excel in all standards in the first year or two, because again, it's complex work and it's the support that is provided that's going to lead to that success. So I think, again, this just reiterates the value of that and what we see from the survey results. So thank you for your work on this. Any other comments or questions on this first segment, the report on the field study? I think we're all excited about, that it looks like we're moving forward, and that especially, next year as we expand this to, any district that's interested. I know that I've worked with some superintendents that are very excited about this opening up next year. So I think all of this data coming to us helps us ensure that we're moving the NEPF forward in a way that supports greater student learning by supporting teachers and administrators.
Pam Teal for the record. I still keep pondering less clear on the difference between a 3 and a 4. And I know that you're going to have some other slides on that, but this really didn't change on the teacher end or the administrator end, other than going in and combining more scores per standard. It didn't change any of the variances between the effective, highly effective, effective, developing, and ineffective. So I'm unclear. I'm even more unclear on not understanding the difference between those two. So interesting.
Yes. Thank you, Member Till. My exact thoughts is that the language of performance levels has not changed. And it is very, very specific about what the language is for highly effective and what the language is for effective, what the language is for developing, what the language is for ineffective. And so again, I think that's why it goes back to we need more professional learning opportunities so that our administrators, and perhaps this is a novice administrator, will have more, be able to develop more experience around that. So again, thank you.
Kathy Hoyt for the record.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Chair Salazar, I didn't mean to speak over.
Nope, I was going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Just to to share with the council, as we have met with our work groups and have conducted office hours and, provided guidance to our LEAs on the difference between a 3 and a 4, our recommendation to them is to refer back to the performance level language and to really analyze the difference between what we're saying is a true 4 versus a true 3, and ensuring that their educators can meet the full description within the performance level. So that's the guidance that we've been providing to them.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Just to move on, we are at the point in the school year where principal supervisors and building administrators are initiating their summative evaluation process. We've had lengthy discussions with our work group members, like we had just said, and NDE staff regarding the feedback that we've received during the field study. And many participants expressed concern with inter-rater reliability and subjectivity in summative scoring, which I believe was a concern even in the initial iteration of the NEPF, but that the desire to further simplify the summative evaluation process, admin and teacher time constraints, and educator best practice are all, common topics about how we can work to improve the NEPF. So what we would like to do as only a topic of discussion is to solicit TLC's feedback on a potential differentiated evaluation cycle for the NEPF with only potential field study participants during the 2025-2026 school year. So again, this is just for a topic of discussion. So currently our NEPF protocols, set requirements for implementation of the NEPF rubrics, self-assessment, goal setting, observation cycles, how we collect evidence, frequency, and then there is the class size adjustment component. What the Nevada Administrative Code and NEPF protocols do not state is whether or not educators must be evaluated on all standards and indicators within each evaluation cycle. It is not stated directly. So in meeting with our work groups and doing some strategizing at NDE, we wanted to propose an idea. So if we were to go into the next year of the field study, potentially we could suggest that the evaluation cycle be differentiated for certain educator groups. We would not suggest changing the way that probationary or developing or ineffective educators based on their previous year's rating are observed or what they're held responsible to. Those 3 groups would be observed or responsible for providing evidence for all standards and indicators based on their previous year's evaluation. So this would not apply to, again, probationary, developing, or those rated ineffective. What was suggested is potentially making some alterations for educators that are rated effective and those that are rated highly effective. So a post-probationary educator that is rated effective based on this idea, based on their previous year's evaluation, could potentially be observed or responsible for providing evidence for any standard where any indicator, if we chose to go back to having indicator scoring as opposed to just standard scoring, if they received a 2 or lower on any standard or indicator, they would be responsible for providing evidence for that standard. If the educator did not receive a score of 2 or lower on any indicator, they would still be responsible for providing evidence for 1 instructional practice or instructional leadership standard for administrators, and 1 professional responsibility standard that their supervising administrator identifies as an area of growth, and 1 instructional practice and 1 professional responsibility that they self-identify as an area of growth. So potentially this could reduce the standards that the educator would be evaluated on to as low as 4 standards as opposed to 10. And again, potentially we would return back to have indicator scoring as opposed to just standard scoring. So any comments or feedback before we look at highly effective educators. And I wanted to maybe start the floor with Chair Salazar.
Oh, thank you. So Pam Salazar for the record. I think just, my concern is that, and this is a little bit of a history lesson in terms of the development of the NEPF and what TLC requested when we first contracted with Crest and WestEd for the development. The efficacy of the NEPF was built on kind of two foundational requirements. And the first was that because the system and what TLC asked in terms of the design was that it was about enabling teachers to enable student learning. In other words, it was always about growth in teacher practice so that it resulted in growth in student learning. And the requirements that came back to us from Crest is that we have a framework for you, this set of, and I'm only talking about the instructional practice standards, that these instructional standards are a framework, they're integrated, they're not discrete. And so rule number one is because it is a growth system, we cannot score after each observation. So that was kind of the first premise, if you will, for the efficacy of the system. And the second premise was that the standards cannot be pulled apart. In other words, when we look at how a lesson unfolds, a learning experience unfolds in a classroom, the standards were designed to be observed as a collective, as an integrated system, if you will, of practices that a teacher engages in order to enable learning. And so my concern is always about the efficacy of the system, the credibility of the system. And although I certainly understand the desire to make it easier to only look at, for example, two standards in the instructional practice side, I do have this sense of, because I've been with the TLC and the inception of the NEPF, I just feel that it's important for me to share with you what we expected when the NEPF was designed, as well as I will tell you that this idea of pulling out and looking at one or two standards separately, and again, I'm only focusing on the instructional standards. That's the place where this, the efficacy to me is where it rests. And at that time, we were still in contract with WestEd, Suji Chin, Margaret Heritage, who was the lead designer of the NEPF from Crest, as well as at that time, Lynn Holt-Heide from Great Teachers and Leaders. And again, we were reminded as the TLC that this was always about an integrated system. So I absolutely understand the desire to make it easier, simpler, less time consuming, but I'm also concerned, does that risk then the efficacy of the standards as a set of learning principles, which by the way is what they were called until they had to be changed for, quote, the evaluation system, that are very much intertwined. So that's just kind of my thoughts based on where the history is from the development of the NEPF at the get-go. Other comments or thoughts about this? This first idea here, looking at the effective rating only. And then I know that Kathy will go forward in a moment and tell us also about the highly effective, which would be one standard.
Kathy Hoyt for the record. I see that Member Hicks has her hand raised and then second Member Molden. So Ms.
Thank
Hicks,
you.
if you would like to go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. This is Annie Hicks for the record. I would like to say that I appreciate what Chair Salazar stated and explained historically, and I agree with her assessment. I do appreciate the desired intention of trying to simplify and understanding that educators and administrators are overwhelmed. But I wonder about the unintended consequences of only having limited standards and the way in which it leads to unintentionally assuming we don't need all of them together to have effective teaching happening, which leads to improved learning outcomes. So that would be my comment to add to the conversation and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hicks. Member Moulton?
Sue Molden for the record. I am in full agreement with Chairman Salazar. I have been, a school administrator for 30 years now, and I personally love NEPF. I truly believe that if we implement it with fidelity and that we build those relationships with our teachers, that we truly, truly, truly can make an impact for our students. And if the reason for this adjustment is just because administrators just aren't fully invested in the benefit of this, I think it would be a shame. Data shows that our schools and our students are not at the level that they should be. And how are we going to get them there if we allow everyone to kind of like short sheet our kids? And so my personal belief is that we need to keep it as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Teal?
Pam Teal for the record. It just gives me flashbacks of our system of sat unsat, which was not great back. I mean, some of us have been here, too long, right? But reality of you're minimizing the whole idea of a growth model for effective teaching practices. And so if we're going to take it where we're just going to indicate some but not others, and you're effective here, but that means you're effective across the board, then we're saying you're sat or unsat again. And we know that wasn't benefiting anyone in the system either. And I get it's rigorous, and I get that there is a lot in it. But just like the other two shared, reality is it is quality indicators of teaching practice that is a growth model. And truly, if it's done right, everybody needs growth, if we want to see it that way. Otherwise, let's just sat unsat, call it done again.
Thank you, Member Teal. And Pam Salazar for the record. And I do want to add that, and I shared this with the school board 2 years ago, that we had taken a look at a paper that had been done called The Science of Learning. This was done out of the Learning Policy Institute, done out of Stanford, done by Linda Darling Hammond, who is, I think, just a very renowned and respected educator. And they put together a paper called The Science of Learning. And so we had done kind of a crosswalk, if you will, about what the latest research suggested around what it is that that enables student learning. And collectively, when you crosswalk, it is the NEPF, because the research is as solid today as it was when it was designed with Dr. Heritage and team. But one of the pieces that is, I think, very clear in the paper and the way that Hammond and team looked at this was that they're all integrated. Again, it's not that we can separate out a single practice, if you will, such as meaning making, or a single practice, if you will, such as student metacognition, without recognizing that the other practices are so clearly integrated if we're going to truly lead to student learning. So I think we even have research in 2022 now that supports this idea of that teaching is complex. Leading is complex, but it is that integration of these practices that actually results in the learning. And again, I go back to, from the inception, the NEPF, because of TLC's request, has always been about what is it that we can do to support educators to enable learning. So I just want to give you that other piece of, there's some research out there that supports this idea of how the NEPF was designed in the first place.
Kathy Hoyt for the record. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback. It is much appreciated. Going on into kind of the next segment of this idea, and keeping in mind too that again, it's just conceptual, and so it doesn't have to be an all or nothing suggestion per se, to where it would have to be effective educators and highly effective educators. We can separate the two. But we had kind of a similar concept proposed for the highly effective rated educators. So again, if you received a 2 in a standard or indicator where you were scored at a 2 or lower, it is mathematically possible to get a 2 in an indicator and still be rated highly effective. You would be responsible for providing evidence for that standard. Or if an educator did not receive a score of 2 or lower on any indicator, they would be observed or responsible for only providing evidence for 1 instructional practice or instructional leadership standard and 1 professional responsibility standard that they themselves identify as an area of growth. Any comments or suggestions regarding a potential shift for highly effective educators?
Pam Teal for the record, it would be the same as effective, because you're yet again minimizing the correlation between all of the standards that then interconnect to ensure that we've got a highly effective teacher, whether there's a 2 somewhere or not.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Teal. I would agree. It doesn't make any difference whether we're highly effective or effective.
Okay, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing any hands up before we move on. Okay. Great, thank you, Kathy Hoyt, for the record. So kind of like the comments that you all have shared with us, I mean, there's a lot of additional logistics that would have to be addressed if this concept goes forward, such as, we had feedback from different groups about what would happen or be required if there is a change in site leadership or a work location for the educator. How would it affect the evaluation process? Like, should the cycle start over upon an educator that has a change in placement or a change in location or a transfer from district to district? So those are all, again, items that would have to be addressed before something like this could be implemented. And then any evaluation system is always going to be met with pros and cons. And so we had talked about potential benefits as a tailored approach to supporting individual educator needs with the goal of targeted continuous growth in practice, that educators would focus on refining practice in self-identified and evaluator-identified high needs areas, and that it may also alleviate the largest complaint received about the NEPF implementation is the amount of time required to observe, to collect evidence for all standards and indicators for all educators, which comments we've received tells us hinders administrators from allocating that time to educators maybe in need of more support, such as probationary, ineffective, and developing educators. In which case, again, we wouldn't change the system for those groups. There's always potential drawbacks, though. The cons would be that there is a shift from best practice of all standards to targeted standards. There would definitely be a shift in accountability from all standards to performance on a select few, and that the summative evaluation would be focused on even fewer standards and indicators and could lead to a lower scoring average overall. So are there any other suggestions or just mentions for any additional pros or cons? We'd love to hear your feedback.
Pam Salazar for the record. I think one of the, as we think about the pros, I believe that that's what the PPG is, and we look at the professional practice goal, the design of the system was always about, as we identify what our student needs are and set a student learning goal, then at the same time, we also indicate, a particular standard, a particular area that we want to grow our own practice on. And that was the intent of the PPG process. and help then and support then for the teacher and or the administrator to grow in a particular area. With that said, I want to go back to what you were talking about with the time. You know, I think one of the reasons why we designed the field study with the idea that the indicators would become descriptors, and I can say this from personal experience because I'm working out in Lincoln with administrators there, that the administrators absolutely are seeing much less time intensity, if you will, because of recognizing that I'm not scoring evidence across each indicator, but now I am looking at this collectively and conceptually when we look at the indicators, and this was always the original design, again, coming out of Dr. Heritage's work, is that the indicators really represent, if you will, the teaching moves that the teacher engages in order to meet the standard. So when we look at, for example, the 4 indicators on connecting new learning to prior learning and experience, those indicators really do reflect instructional moves that a teacher would make in order to help students make that connection, or, you know, ensuring tasks have high cognitive demand. Again, the indicators were all about describing, therefore, the descriptors of the practices that a teacher could engage in order for high cognitive demand for diverse learners. And so, again, I think that I'm very excited to see the field study move forward and for it to expand, as we shared with the school board, for other districts that would like to participate, because I think that that's going to give us more data that would suggest that stronger understanding of, first off, the standards in and of themselves, but more importantly, time for them to engage in the right conversations. And I think, as Member Till mentioned, if that's the one thing that we have heard, is that it has helped them have stronger reflective conversations by not having to focus on indicator by indicator by indicator, but instead focusing on collectively these 5 standards really are the flow of a lesson when we're going to enable student learning. So I hope I didn't speak out of turn, Superintendent Till, but that's just been my take as I've been able to interact with your administrators there in Lincoln.
Pam Till, for the record. Reality around, I know it's time consuming. There's no way around, but if you're training and you're facilitating right, where administrators are prioritizing their day towards instruction, then it doesn't become as large of a problem. And they are then spending time in the classroom actually assisting and helping with students while the teacher is then teaching, and modeling those things are imperative as well too for an instructional leader of a building. So there's so many right things going on with, and then how we suggested rolling up into the standards and the indicators feeling shorter should then lead to more time where they can be in the classroom instead of more time trying to figure out how to put something down for every indicator. And I'll never forget, was it last June when we had discussions around teacher evidence and these portfolio books of evidence and stuff. And I'm like, I'm so hoping that in this shift where more are being trained to do this and implement better, that we are not finding that that's not what we ever suggested here. But this is where administrators are actually embedded in the buildings, and it's no longer like, oh my gosh, it's my time for my NEPF evaluation. It's a natural process in a building now where administrators are actually doing school walks and classroom walks to assist everyone in the educational process. That's huge growth. And I think districts are getting there.
Thank you, Member Till. Member Moulton?
I just have a quick, Sue Molden for the record. Quick question. Sorry, I'd been muted again. If it went to this shortened version and they were only looking at 1 or 2 standards, would they still give teachers that bump for class size? It's almost like they shouldn't receive an extra bump. It's like, if you're only looking at 2, they don't need any help. So I'm just asking.
Thank you, Member Molden. I think those are kind of the more of the logistic pieces that Kathy Hoyt was referring to in terms of like the actual logistics of putting it all out, but certainly some good feedback for Ms. Hoyt on that.
Thank you, Chair Salazar and Sue. Kathy Hoyt for the record. So Chair Salazar is correct. That would be another logistic piece, as the class size adjustment is prescribed in law. So that would have to be something that would have to be addressed in a final iteration of this if it were to come to fruition. There would have to be a lot of clarity, I think, in the administrative code, and that would take time to, again, iron out all of the details, make sure that we can implement a system effectively before proceeding further.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Hoyt on this for NDE?
This is Felicia Gonzalez for the record. So I just I want to support everything that you said, Member Teal and Chair Salazar, regarding the actual use of the NEPF. And I have to say that Superintendent Teal has done a tremendous job in actually doing the professional development of her administrators and her teachers, and that has led to the better use of the NEPF, and to where administrators don't feel as if it's a burden. I will tell you that from my own personal experience and working with principals to get them trained to utilize it and supervising their use of it with their teachers. In the very beginning, it does take a lot of time to get that training under their belt, and where the principals do feel as if it is very time consuming. But they actually appreciated the training and the time and the space to get better at it. And actually, it's a retraining of how they spend their time during the day, because it is about getting into the classrooms and supporting instruction so that students are benefiting from it. But bottom line is, until we have our whole entire system in alignment where training is required, we're going to continue to have these types of complaints, because across Nevada, we do not have consistency in the training of our administrators in the NEPF. And so this is going to be a continued conversation, no matter what adjustments that we make. But I agree with you, Chair Salazar, that the efficacy of the NEPF is at risk. And so eliminating anything, because it all works together, and it works together beautifully to support. And so I don't like, I would just hate to see that we peel away any piece of it, because once again, if properly trained on how to utilize it, principals do end up finding those efficiencies, because it all becomes part of what they do.
Yep. Yes. Thank you for that comment, Member Ortiz. Thank you. Any more comments or questions? Then thank you for that, Ms. Hoyt. And we will then move on to agenda item 7, which is an update on the legislative session.
Thank you, Chair Salazar. And just to clarify, the last comment was not made by Member Ortiz. It was by Member Gonzalez, just for the record.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. I kept looking for okay hand. Thank you.
Okay, so going into the current legislative session, at this time, there's no proposed legislation that is directly impacting the NEPF. And with the exception of the 2023 legislative session, there have been bills passed into law during each session since the enactment of the NEPF. So we feel that it is likely at some point that a bill will be at least proposed. So NDE will keep the TLC appraised if any bills are presented, but at this time we are aware of none. But we did want to share some information regarding a Senate bill that would directly impact the membership of TLC. So this is Senate Bill 78, which proposes various changes, consolidations, and termination of the composition and operation of various boards, commissions, and councils. There are several mentioned, including TLC. It seeks to revise membership of the Teachers and Leaders Council, as well as a number of other groups. And the bill so far has been heard at multiple subcommittee hearings, but at this point, no action has been taken. What is being recommended in the bill is that membership would be reduced from 16 to 9 members, with cuts being made in the number of teacher members, down from 4 members to 1. Cuts made in our administrator members, down from 2 to only 1. And then a cut in our district board trustee members, down from 2 to 1, and members with education policy expertise from 2 to 1. So it is effectively cutting our council almost in half. They are also proposing that appointments to the council would no longer stem from the governor's boards and commission's office, but that would be made by the superintendent of public instruction. And another interesting part of the bill is that language requiring nominees to represent the geographical diversity of school districts in the state has been removed. So we will keep TLC appraised of the bill if it does move forward. And we were also informed just very recently, and in fact, it's not in our presentation because it is so new, about an additional bill. It's actually Assembly Bill 236. This is also potentially impacting membership of TLC. And in Assembly Bill 236, the bill proposes changing the nomination process for both teacher members and our other licensed educational personnel member. Currently, the way that TLC operates is that the governor appoints a member from a list of 3 nominees from the Nevada State Education Association for those 2 member groups. If Assembly Bill 236 were to pass in its current iteration, the governor would instead appoint members from a list of 6 nominees, with 3 nominees submitted by the employee organization representing the plurality of teachers employed by a large school district, and 3 nominees submitted by an employee organization representing the plurality, sorry, it's a hard word to say, of teachers employed by school districts in other districts. And then the members appointed would have to represent geographical diversity of school districts in the state. The only school district in Nevada that is defined per NRS as a large school district, and that includes having more than 100,000 pupils enrolled in their public schools, is Clark County. So the Clark County School District, according to this bill, would have their members or potential members nominated not from NSEA, but from whatever the largest employee organization representing them would be. So again, NDE will keep TLC informed if the items move to a floor vote and if that result ultimately affects the council. But if the council has any comments to make, they can share them with the council.
This is Felicia Gonzalez for the record.
Yes, Member
yes.
Gonzalez.
So I just want to share that that I do believe that SB 78 underwent some amending, and I think that the status of this council may have changed in that bill. So I recommend just touching base with Alexia Van Orden, who's the new legislative liaison at NDE, just to confirm that that in fact happened.
Thank you, Member Gonzalez, for that update. With that, then, I'm going to move to agenda item 8, and especially with regards to our upcoming meeting scheduled for April 30th. Yes, Ms. Hoyt, did you want to share with us what your thoughts were there?
So for any future agenda items, again, we will keep the council informed if between then and now there's any proposed legislation affecting TLC or that could directly impact the NEPF. We also know that last year in April, we had an in-person meeting. And so if that is something that TLC is interested in doing again, in convening before we prepare recommendations for the state board for the following year of the field study, we could opt to meet in person, and we can send out a survey to council members to make arrangements and see if there is an interest in that and determine if the best location would be in Carson City or in Las Vegas. So we'll have a big discussion on the conclusion of the first year of the field study and TLC's recommendations to the state board for our report for the June 25th state board meeting.
Thank you. Any other potential agenda items that you believe TLC should consider for the April 30th meeting? I do think, as Ms. Hoyt said, our big ticket items are what's going on in legislature, and then secondly, what's going on in terms of the field study and recommendations for expansion for next year. And then I know we'll also have the RPDPs present at that meeting, kind of a year summary. So again, ask members if there's any additional ideas, thoughts of what we need to consider, put in front of the council. So hearing no additional, then Kathy, we'll work together and make a determination of whether this is an in-person meeting and if there are additional agenda items. It may be that we might not need an in-person meeting. Certainly up to you as the members of what you feel is important for us to do. Any other comments, inputs for the good of the order today for TLC?
I just can't seem to help myself today. Pam Teal for the record. I think we met twice last year in person, if I recall, or I maybe went twice because we were having other discussions that I thought were imperative. In person does have a different flavor of really being able to answer and listen to questions differently, whether we like it or not. So yes, it's travel for me, but I would be happy to come to an in-person meeting.
Thank you, Member Teal. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's certainly, the discussion, I think it's more rich when we're together face to face. So we'll work through that, Kathy, in terms of preparation for the April 30th meeting and get a sense of what we should do there. Any other comments, closing comments before I move to public comment number 2? So before I move there, I do want to again thank all of the work that NDE is doing on this. And again, the work that, Senior Deputy Attorney General Dave Gardner is helping us with, because these meetings would not run without their support. So I just want to get that on the record before I now move to public comment number 2. So I would again go to the north. And do we have any public comment there?
There are no public comments here in Carson City.
Thank you. Now to the south, is there public comment?
There is no current public comment here in Las Vegas.
Thank you, Rick. And is there any email public comment?
There is no current email public comment here at this time.
Okay, great. Well, with that said, I again would like to thank everyone for participating today. Thank you for supporting me. I'll try to continue to lead TLC in ways that best serves our students. That's what we are all committed to, is serving the best that we can for Nevada kids. So with that, I would now like to adjourn the Teachers and Leaders Council meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your willingness to serve.
And Chair Salazar, what time are we adjourning?
We are adjourning at 3:34.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.